And thanks for staying with us here on the Pulse on the JoyNews channel. Top stories for today as we bring you the polls. Of course, the National Association of Law Students is condemning the leakage of the law school entrance examination questions, which forced the General Legal Counsel to reschedule the papers, resulting in a 4-hour delay, causing anxiety amongst students on campus. Will bring you reactions from the National Association of Law Students, which is taking notice of this, and will get details of how this papers actually flooded social media, plus assess the likely impact on the integrity of the selection process. And Ghana will not recognize any annexation of Ukraine territories. That's the position of the government of Ghana as it expresses displeasure over Russia's posture at the UN Security Council.
Ghana does not and will not recognize any territory that is unilaterally and forcefully required or acquired as dismembered from a sovereign entity.
But is this position strategic for a nation which claims to be non-aligned? Would probe the matters further and bringing back the love for the Black Stars. This afternoon, the senior national team is today facing off in a friendly match with the Samba Boys of Brazil. Stay with us as we explore the likely impact of this game on Ghana's World Cup championship.
This is a test. It's a test of strength, it's a test of character, it's a test of ideas, a test of performance. This is, again, preparing you for the biggest stage in world football.
And thanks for staying with us on The Pulse. The Pulse, as always, is brought to you by Global Communities Dignity Lu, Affordable Safe Sanitation. Remember that this afternoon we're streaming live on YouTube and on social media as at JoyNews on TV. I'm Blessed Sogah. Thanks for staying with us, and we'll bring you the details shortly. And indeed, it was a long wait for prospective students of the Ghana School of Law today after it emerged that their entrance examination papers reportedly leaked and had to be rescheduled. Well, JoyNews sources are indicating that the General Legal Counsel was forced to abort the process after it discovered that the questions put forward by the Independent Committee on Examinations flooded social media. So what more are we learning about the leakage of the entrance examination papers? Joining me via Zoom now is Joseph Akable, is our court correspondent, also monitoring issues relating to this leakage for us. These are reports, but Joseph, first of all, have we confirmed if indeed there was a leakage, and what's happening to the papers now? Are they being written?
So first, on what is happening now, the rescheduled paper was to commence at 1:30, and from what we understand was supposed to last about an hour and a half, and so from what we are picking up, it will mean that they should be wrapping up by now. But in terms of the information regarding the leakage, what we do know is that, this morning and late last night, there were some questions that were on social media, and they came with answers in some instances as well. And so, not long after the news came in, and indeed there was a notice that was put out by the Independent Examination Council that administers this particular exams, informing students that the exam had been rescheduled from the 10 a.m. to the 1:30. And so we've not seen or cited an official communication from the Independent Examination Committee blaming it specifically on a leakage, but we have seen those questions that have gone on, and what we understand from persons who are close to this particular event is that it's as a result of the leakage that is what resulted in that set of questions that should have been written by the students at 10 a.m. being withdrawn for fresh questions to be handed them at 1:30. And so it's an issue that came as an issue of concern for a lot of the students, particularly because some of them, they are prepared to go into the exam hall at 10 a.m. Then you now have to go back and prepare and come back at 1:30 a.m. for what you do not know, and obviously it's worrying for them as well.
And how usual or otherwise is this issue of the rescheduling of papers or cancellation, outright one as we're seeing by the General Legal Counsel? When last did we witness a similar incident?
I think the one that readily comes to mind, if I recall correctly, should be in 2018. There was a similar concern, but this is not the first time that this issue has come up. Even in terms of the professional program itself at the Ghana School of Law, there is often also this problem of the exam leaking, and in some instances, you either have the papers being cancelled for students. I mean, I remember, I think the 2018 one specifically, the entrance examination, there was a situation where students had to take a supplementary exam as well. And so this is not the first time that this particular incident has happened. And it's among the litany of criticisms that people tend to raise against the work that is being done by the Independent Examination Council.
And we must state that the entrance exam is very much dreaded by students who want to going for their professional training. Having learnt of that news that it may be rescheduled or outrightly cancelled for another set of questions to come up, I'm just wondering what may be going through the minds of a lot of students.
I mean, those that I engaged, I mean, once the news came out, it was that of worry, and especially because of the fact that they were preparing. Not necessarily those I interacted with are not people who, I mean, at least what they tell us, are not people who had access to these particular sets of questions that went viral. But the argument is that, I mean, and what I kept asking them was, are these questions that they could even answer? They said, well, these are questions that we could perhaps have answered some of them. And then they now have to prepare again a couple of hours, the anxiety. I mean, you are praying, you're going through your final preparations to go in, and you are told that, okay, you have to come back at 1:30. And so another set of preparation again, you do not know whether what you've seen on social media, which in your opinion, maybe you can answer some of them, whether the one that you presented eventually is of the nature that you can answer the same quantity of them in order to secure the necessary pass mark.
And for the sake of those who may not have been on social media, give us a sense of how bad or otherwise the situation was online. Having seen some of these papers flood the space, and did they even come with answers? Because there are some reports even indicating to us that indeed the answers were provided to some of the questions. So for some people, that's how bad the situation was.
So for some of the questions that went round, I mean, they came with another PDF document that had the answers provided. They are not answers in the strict sense of, I mean, what exactly you should produce, more or less like an examiner's guide, if I'm to put it that way. So it gives you a sense of the issues of law that the examiner expects you to raise, the relevant cases are indicated, and what you should be addressing by way of your analysis and your conclusion as well. So it's a skeletal makeup, which, I mean, if anyone has access to, it could form the basis of a person putting up a very good performance. And I mean, what we need to understand for this particular year's exams is that, unlike the previous year, this time around, they indicated that they will determine the pass mark. You recall what happened with the 499 instance, and where the people, the students had made a point that, I mean, in past years, the understanding was that the pass mark was getting more than at least 50 or more. So that was what the understanding that they went into the exam with. And so this time around, the committee indicated that going into the exam, they will determine the pass mark. And so students who are writing as we speak now do not even know what the pass mark will be. And so it's a bit more dicey this year than even the previous years. And so when you're even writing, you can't even do your computation and say, okay, maybe I have more than half. And so I know that I've got more.
And finally, Blay, any word from management of the Ghana School of Law, at least on what we've reported?
No, in fact, the only notice that came out was specifically directed at the students, indicating that the padding ratio to 1:30 p.m.
Anyway, I would have to leave it here for now. Joseph Akablé, our correspondent. Let me bring in at this moment Ni Ama, who happens to be a lawyer and also a member of the Center for Social Justice. Hassan Asari is president for the National Association of Law Students. In fact, they are condemning what we've witnessed in terms of the exam questions flooding social media. So probably it's a time now to revisit that post on Facebook and to try as much as possible to get contents of what it is that the National Association of Law Students have just indicated on this matter. It reads that we have taken notice of the social media circulation or leakage of questions allegedly intended for the 2022-2023 Ghana School of Law entrance examination, originally scheduled for 10 a.m. today, Friday, the 23rd of September 2022, and we wish to state as follows. First of all, we condemn in no uncertain terms this occurrence. We're calling on the security agencies to immediately investigate with a view to bring persons associated with same to book. And then there's a third point that this is not the first time this has happened. In 2018, the entrance examination questions leaked and resulted in the supplementary exams 2 weeks after the examination was written. And then in July 2022, the civil procedure paper of professional law course was leaked as well. That's today's leakage. 2 months after the July's paper or leakage makes this development not an isolated case. These occurrences are an indictment on the independence of the examination committee, which is the IEC, and by extension, the General Legal Counsel. It actually gives a picture of the inability to handle legal education, which unfortunately they continue to be in charge of. And leakages of examination questions is a proof that people are desperate when, of course, some have to use any means possible to succeed. And it is clear that such a system will only favor those that have the means and are closer to persons with access. So the statement goes on and on, but it's a good time to bring the two gentlemen in now. I'll start off with you, Hassan Asari, since that comment was posted by your association, and then we'll get the thoughts of Niyama. So when you say that you want action in terms of investigations, are you expecting that there will be anybody beyond the General Legal Counsel to probe this?
Thank you for the opportunity, but I hope so. Unfortunately, I tried to dig to see if there was any investigations when the 2018 one occurred. I did not find anything to read or anything to confirm that it so happened. But I think, as I have chronologically stated, 2018 it happened, July it happened, and it just happened. It calls for concern. And I think reasonably, anybody would want to know what is going on. And for me, I think it has to be investigated, and I hope they do.
You're still blaming the system in the statement that was just released. It appears that you have a sense that the law school examination is still not a fair process in terms of selecting students for the professional course.
Yes, and I still stand by it. This particular exam, I have said, is not transparent. It is opaque. It is not a fair process, and students would unjustly be denied. The structure lends itself to abuse, and it does not test on merit. I don't call it examination. It is a selection. Because I'm going to write an exam, I don't know the pass mark, I cannot see the mark script, I cannot see the marking scheme, I cannot request for retallying, and I must accept without question. That is the English that kills me all the more. Accept without question. And we are talking of law. So for me, I don't think it is transparent. If I had 73 and you gave me 37, I'd have to live with it, even though it's your fault. And I have always said, it is a human institution. And this is a proof of the statement I keep saying. It is a human institution, and mistakes are inevitable. So if people feel you are not being fair to them, they will use any means they can have to actually find a way to go through. And unfortunately, that is what we are envisaging now. Yes, they will pay anything. What I've not been able to establish is whether people were paid to give the results out or it was through negligence. I can't really say. And that is why I would...
What are your findings pointing to? I'm sure that initially, when it came on social media, you had done some checks about what was going on. In fact, to the extent that the examiner's guide is on social media. That's how flawed the process seems to be. We're not sure if that's the exact reason for which the papers are being rescheduled. But what's your check revealing to you in terms of the investigations that you've done, initial ones?
I think it is obvious that if indeed they move the exam from 10 o'clock to 1:30 p.m. as I confirmed from the students, then something may have happened, which should not be out of the usual. Now, what even woke me up this morning was a number of calls I saw on my phone. I spoke with some of them who wanted me to organize a boycott. I told them it's too late because I had requested for that, and unfortunately it didn't happen. The problem is they felt psychologically they weren't prepared or they will not be prepared. They felt if I could find a way to speak to anybody, but GLC never speaks. That's the problem. You can raise anything, they will never speak to you. And that is what difficulty some of us get when we have to even ascertain information. I don't think it should always be about the RTI or the Right to Information Bill. If we can speak to some of these issues, which is affecting Ghanaian students, we think they should be willing to open up for us to contribute or come to a consensus of some sort to find one solution once and for all. And I believe that, I have always said, I think the problem is they just do not want to open legal education. If that thing happens, some of these things would not happen.
Okay, we'll come to the diagnosis of the problem. Niyama, you have also been monitoring this. How do we move forward in terms of ensuring justice? I'm not sure if any of the students have been, of course, oppressed in the process, or the General Legal Counsel, we cannot establish now to say, well, they've been unfair to the students simply because of the examination leakage, because they've not given that clear indication that, well, we are rescheduling simply because of the papers on social media. So from your perspective as the Center for Social Justice, what do you make of all of these papers that have gone online and delays in the examination?
Good. Good evening to your listeners and our viewers. It's not a good one at all, because specifically when this is not the first time it's happening. I mean, you can squarely put the blame at the doorstep of the organizers of the examination. As much as we do not condone or support any examination malpractice, the managers of the examination would have to ensure that whatever they have to put in place for such acts not to happen, they have to do it. And specifically when this is not the first time, it tells you that somebody is not doing his or her work well. And you can tell the psychological trauma that it puts people into. I mean, I've taught in the university for 10 years. And I can say that when you set examination questions, you don't set only one. So if they've done their due diligence and have seen what has leaked, then it is up to them to bring an alternative paper without altering the time. But to change time and not speaking and saying that the time has been changed from this time to that time, it is a problem for us.
Do you have a sense do you have a sense that this may affect the quality or the integrity of the examination process?
Sure, we would have everything to blame, because as far as things have not gone the smooth way, I mean, for me as a lawyer who practices in another jurisdiction and a member of the International Bar Association, I've had friends calling me because they read a thing and they told me, Nee, is this not the things that you've been talking about? Because I wrote copiously and I've published a book, The Crucifixion of LI 1296, which concerns legal education in Ghana. I've pointed out what we should not do. And the big question is, what is it if all Ghanaians want to become lawyers? Okay.
So let's
is it not the thing that is going to serve us better? The problem is simply a problem of space. If we have the vision to know that we're developing a country where population will grow, organizations will come up, institutions will come up. I mean, regions are even going to come up where we will need lawyers in every nook and cranny of the society. Then we should have expanded. But this tells you that we are not vicious enough. We do not see that future. And the future is with us here today, and we're trying to, through unjustifiable means, cut people off. I mean, for an examination that less than 10% of entrants pass, it's a problem. And it's a worry for the country.
So let's get to it then. Let's get to it then, because it appears that, and just as we're learning from the National Association of Law Students, this is not the first time this is happening. 2018, they point back to some years as well, where we've recorded all of these infractions, if you want to call them as such. How do we solve the problem? And for instance, how did you diagnose the problem in this book that you're talking about?
I mean, well, I've given various solutions to the problem. One, to answer your question straight, those who manages the examination, if there is a leakage, it comes from those who manages it. You can't blame any student whatsoever, because the students do not set the exams. They do not have custody of the examination question. So if the question comes up, it is the blame of the managers of the examination. They have to be blamed and they have to accept that blame and they must be punished for it, because that is what the law prescribes. they have to be punished for it, for being negligent on their work and allowing those things to go out. Or it means that there are certain actors in the chain that cannot be trusted, and that you cannot blame any student for. Why will these things happen? It's a matter of space. If you have a huge inlet and a small outlet, this is what happens. I mean, you have thousands of entrants and you have hundreds to be taken. Definitely people are going to scramble and find ways to get into the admission process. So it's not become a thing of meritocracy. Rather, it become a thing of like an animal kingdom, the strongest animals survive and how to do it. That is not how it is done. In any case, it must be known that the professional law education is only a continuation of what we do from the LLB. And the LLB is what qualifies a lawyer to be learned. When we say people are learned, it means that they've read and they've gone through the academic rigors of education. The law school, which is the professional level, is apprenticeship. Okay? That is why in the past you have people without LLB, yet they are able to access the professional law education. Which means that if that is anything to reason with, it means that we have to expand that space and give room for apprenticeship. Okay? Give room for apprenticeship. Once the person has gone through the LLB, which is academic work, it should be easy to continue. Where they can put strong stops or checks on would be the qualification entry to join the bar. And that is what is done in America, that is what is done in other jurisdictions. So that the legal education is not cut half. I don't think that any country should pride itself in training its citizenry to have half education. Because as it stands, if you finish the LLB, you are not yet a lawyer, and you have not finished your law education. So why don't it flow to finish up to the professional level? Then the examination comes in before the call to the bar. Okay? And even I've said again in that book that we have to prescribe solutions to peculiar problems. Why don't you bring in strong apprenticeship? Why? Whilst people practice from the lower courts. So for instance, you finish the LLB, you continue to the professional level, you pass out, and then you are first called to practice at the lower court. And that is where we have a lot of problems. That is where we read in the news, somebody has stolen a chicken and he's been thrown into prison for 5 years because that person was not represented in court. Okay? So if you go through these systems of people upgrading to practice in the higher court, unlike what we see now, we are going to strengthen the practice at the lower base, where they will be mentored by senior lawyers. They do a number of cases at the lower courts, and then you are posted, just like national service.
I see
you are posted through the country to serve, so that we know that in all the 16 regions, we have fair representation of law students who have adequate knowledge of the basics of the law.
Okay, then, but beyond that,
you start through that number of years under a senior lawyer, then you come to write an examination which qualifies you to practice at the higher court level.
So this is what I want us to address our minds to, Nneema, and I want to bring in Hassan at this point. The fact that, in all fairness, the General Legal Counsel works with the IEC, the Independent Commission, or the committee, I should say, in terms of examination when it comes to the entrance exams for the law school. So if that's the setup for this law school admission process, where do we lay the blame? Do we find a way of roping in the General Legal Counsel, or let's try and situate this within the scope of those organizing the examination?
I think whether you like it or not, I see them as the administrators or overseers when it comes to some of these decision makings. They cannot in one or the other say they are not privy to. And to sit unconcerned indirectly would mean that you approve of whatever is going on. Now, the question is, 2018 it happened. July this year it happened. What have they done about it? Why is the GLC quiet about it? Is it because it favors them? Is it because they could go behind us and draw 10 people in without writing the exams? So we think if they want to really run a fair and a system which has the integrity it deserves, then we need to put in
but whenever you bring that point up, there are some lawyers within the system who contested what you're putting out there. The fact that the admission process is as rigorous as you can find it anywhere else in the world.
So can that, whoever challenges me, justify how the 10 got in? Maybe we should start talking about that. How did the 10 that they claim themselves, I didn't do it, I read the report, went in without writing an exam? What is rigorous here? So for me, I think it begins with them. Unless otherwise they don't see anything wrong with the 10, then they can talk about rigorous. So if 2,600 plus are sitting for this exam, obviously they would do anything to go through, as long as this system, as it says, is unfair. I have said time without number that this particular exam and the requirements thereof is not something that we can confidently say an examination. It is a selection.
So what should happen then? Do we take a look at scrapping everything, starting afresh? What do you suggest?
My first interview, I think a year or two ago at Joy Prime, I said something, and I still stand by it. Square pegs can never be put in a round hole. It will not work. And I still stand by it. Because the place of a lawyer or a judge is to adjudicate and not to educate. So whoever is manning the IEC, is the person a legal educationist? I'm so curious. If we don't find, if we think it's all about legal education, I have always said, we can have the GLC, have something like maybe the Ministry of Education, sitting as an examining body, but consulting GLC on the right thing to do in setting these exams. Even WAEC itself is failing. How much more IEC? So for me, I think, one, we need the political will to change or make up our minds that we want to open up legal education. If we are not going to do this, we'll come here every year to discuss some of these injustices and some of these unfair things that keep happening. We've been talking about it, and this is not something that we disagree that is unreasonable. We know it's problematic. Right. We have the men, as we put it, to resolve some of these problems. Why do we have to come here year in, year out and talk about the same thing? So for us, we think this problem can be solved. We should find a way to resolve this ASAP. And that is what we're calling for the expansion of legal education. Now, the last time we talked about this, they took us to the law village to say that they were building whatever. And they showed us articulators and whatnot. Right after, the place has started growing. There's no activity there. Gaslighting as always. Who are we deceiving? These are children. This is the future of Ghanaians. So we didn't frustrate them. All of us cannot sit at the GLC. That is why people are appointed to take reasonable decisions. That will favor everybody here, every student. So for me, I think we should sit up, get the right thing done, and those in there who are misbehaving should be fired. We should see something. To the extent that it's been investigated, we realize that Mr. ABC was involved, therefore they've been fired. We are satisfied with some of these things. But by and large, I don't think the IEC is competent or has the capacity to run legal education examination. And it should be scrapped.
Anyway, we'll see about that. We need to go. But Nneɛma, for you, we also do have the Attorney General and the Minister for Justice. Your brief words on your expectation from his outfit on solving some of these challenges.
From the Attorney General and the Minister of Justice to the President. Because, I mean, the President is a lawyer, as we know. I mean, that is his profession. Today we can point Professor Mills to the expansion of the law faculty in the University of Ghana. We can point him to the High Court complex. We want to point our President today to something. The problem we have today is legal education, the expansion of professional legal education. I want him to be firm, to take that leadership decision, to say that he's solving this problem, because that is the profession, that is his profession. It must be very dear to his heart. If we will count him for something, if nothing at all, we want to count him to have been the man who solved professional legal education. Anything short of that is a big failure for having a president who is a lawyer who is not able to solve the problem of professional legal education.
Anyway, we'll see about that, if indeed your appeal will do anything about this. But I'm grateful. That's Nneɛma Ade, member of the Center for Social Justice. Also, Hassan Asari is president of the National Association for Law Students. And we're staying on the judiciary because the Deputy Majority Leader in Parliament, Alexander Benyamin, has described as dangerous attempts by some political actors to politicize the appointment of judges. Now, according to him, such comments undermine the independence and integrity of the judiciary. Former President John Dramani Mahama in recent times has taken a swipe at the judiciary, alleging that it has been manipulated by political powers. The 2020 NDC flag bearer, who lost the elections and subsequently lost the election petition at the Supreme Court, insists that the judiciary must undergo some urgent reforms. But Apenyumakin disagrees. He's been speaking at the University of Cape Coast, addressing the Law Students' Union there.
In practice, the judiciary upholds the rule of law by providing fair and impartial resolution of dispute between parties in line with statutes or case law in force. To do this, the judiciary must not only profess independence, but must be seen by all keen observers to be genuinely independent. Indeed, the framers of this 1992 Constitution have explained, while giving authority to the President of the Republic of Ghana to appoint certain categories of persons who serve in our judiciary, also cast around the judiciary a powerful veil of independence to shield it from explicit or crafty acts of the appointer. Increasingly, however, the judiciary is coming under unjust fire merely because vacancies have occurred in crucial courts in recent years. And in the dutiful President of the Republic has had the discharge this sacred obligation imposed by the Constitution on him to make appointment to fill those vacancies. Those appointments coincided with subsequent judicial decisions against some plaintiffs of a particular political color. And so, critics have dangerously weaponized the appointment of judicial officers in a way as to mislead unsuspecting citizens into believing that judges do the bidding of the president who appoints them. This is a dangerous trend that must be discouraged to protect the health of our democracy.
Well, let's turn our attention and focus on what's happening at the United Nations, because Minister for Foreign Affairs and Regional Integration, Shirley Ayokobochi, says Ghana will not recognize any annexation of Ukraine territories by the Russian Federation. While addressing a special meeting of the United Nations Security Council on the maintenance of peace and security of Ukraine in New York, Shirley Ayokobochi noted that Ghana remains committed to its position that the Russian invasion of Ukraine is in breach of international law and is unjustified.
People. Ghana does not and will not recognize any territory that is unilaterally and forcefully required or acquired as dismembered from a sovereign entity. We reiterate the call on the Russian Federation to immediately and unconditionally cease its operations, withdraw its troops from the internationally recognized borders of Ukraine, and respect its neighbors' sovereignty and political independence. The need for a credible pathway for a genuine diplomatic process is urgent. The barrel of the gun does not provide such a pathway. It only leads to needless loss of lives and destruction on both sides. Indeed, the costs of the war have been high, not only for the parties, but also for the rest of the world. As the President of Ghana said yesterday in his statement at the General Assembly, I quote, "Every bullet, every bomb, every shell that hits a target in Ukraine hits our pockets and our economies in Africa," unquote. In this regard, let me place on record Ghana's appreciation for the good offices of the Secretary General and other international actors to leverage life-saving humanitarian interventions at critical times of the war.
And a number of questions are beginning to emerge about Ghana's decision to condemn Russia upfront. So let's bring in Dr. Ishmael Holombo. He is an international relations expert joining us live via Zoom. Thank you, sir, for your time. So let's assess what it is that Ghana has stated at the United Security Council. Of course, we're not having a permanent seat, which means that we're on the non-permanent seat. But in quite an unconventional fashion, you find the foreign minister going all out on Russia. Is that a safe thing to do as a developing nation? You'd have to unmute for me first of all so I can hear the points you're making. Kindly unmute for me, sir, so I can hear the points you're making.
Hello?
Yes, I can hear you loud and clear now.
Okay, all right. Good evening to you and your listeners. I think that, yes, it is safe, provided we do it within the context of the multilateral environment that we are doing it. It's not like we are unilaterally condemning Russia's action, but of course, it is very important that Ghana states a position on this very important international development. This is a crucial development, which is one of the ingredients that we have stood for all these years, making sure that we have an independent opinion on international development.
But then we do know that some bigger nations, for instance, China, have abstained, for instance, when it comes to the public or outright condemnation of Russia in terms of what we're seeing in terms of the war between Russia and Ukraine. So why are we not having Ghana follow suit just to play safe, if we could use that word?
Okay, you have to understand some actions within the context of what the actor is doing. If you take China, for instance, China has its own geostrategic reasons for abstaining. It has issues of territorial claim in the South China Sea. It has same issues, particularly in relation to Taiwan, which it has always said that if pushed to the wall, they will use force to take. So looking at Russia invading Ukraine and the response of the international community is just like a replica of what China may do if pushed to the wall over its sovereign claim over Taiwan. So yes, you must also understand the kind of relation between Russia and China. They are quite close as at this moment. So yes, a power like that may not speak to this issue in terms of condemning Russia. But if you look at Ghana, historically, we have involved a certain policy stand over the years, and we base our foreign policy on a number of principles, including respect for international law, respect for sovereignty, and then, of course, we are interested in peaceful resolution of conflict. So, given our own history as a colonized nation, and over the years being a country that believed that territorial sovereignty should be respected, we cannot stay aloof and watch this without making our positions known. So it's very important you put it within the context of China and the context of Ghana.
And then a lot is happening at the United Nations Security Council. We see that trend, constant one, first of all, starting from the president, trying to paint the picture about how there's a direct impact of what's happening in Ukraine on Ghana. They continue to say that every bomb, every bullet that continues to shell or hit Russia, Ukraine, I should say, has a direct impact on our pockets here in Ghana. A lot of Ghanaians are yet to come to terms with that statement by the president. Is he, in your view, over-exaggerating, or if we could use that word, exaggerating the situation and the likely impact of this war on developing nations such as Ghana?
Well, looking at the forum that the president has to speak, it is important that he highlights the effect of the conflict on the rest of the world, not only on Ukraine. And of course, if we distance ourselves from saying that it doesn't have any impact, in natural fact, it's having an impact on us. For instance, we know that since the war began, food prices have gone up, and particularly grains, because both Russia and Ukraine are major producers of cereals for the world market. So yes, the impact has been with us, but it's also about our own domestic policies. We cannot solely say that it's because of the war in Russia and Ukraine that has caused all the economic problems that we are facing. It speaks to, for instance, our agricultural policy over the years. Are we able to sustain ourselves in the absence of food supply from other regions, for instance? That also is a question we should be asking ourselves. So yes, it is right that the president pointed out that the conflict in Ukraine is having a major toll on African economies because of the interwoven nature of the current international political economy. There is any major development anywhere will have an effect across the globe. And countries that cannot adapt easily in terms of having domestic strategies and policies that will be had that region.
And of course, we've started seeing some superpowers yielding to the constant demand for a reform itself on the structure of the international system, particularly the United Nations. The US President Joe Biden, they're backing the issue of a possible reform on the United Nations Security Council itself. The fact that there should be representation from the likes of Africa and Latin America. We know that Ghana would maybe putting itself up as a candidate, possible one, of course, but giving our insistence that Russia is not approaching the Ukrainian war properly, could they not veto our chances and also try and sabotage us?
To understand, you want to say that, well, given our own interest, it is good to play a kind of neutral game, and so that when we need the assistance of Russia, then we will be able to draw on the assistance. But you see, Ghana's foreign policy since Kwame Nkrumah has involved a particular concept of positive neutrality. Now, you should differentiate the idea of positive neutrality from negative neutrality, which simply is that you must not care whatever happens, that should be neutral. But the concept of positive neutrality, what it actually entails is that while you make sure that you don't take sides in a major conflict, you must also be able to state your independent view on any international development. Now, this is taking these positions akin to saying that you will just mind whatever will benefit you. But you see, invariably, Russia's action in Ukraine will draw a certain precedent that other nations that may want to advance territorial claim may follow. And of course, in Africa, where you may not know if other powers may also start to make claims in Africa in terms of territory. So you must also begin to defend your own territory by making your position known to countries that are maybe forced, that the era of using force to claim territory, to redraw the global map, have gone. So we must begin to, as a small nation, your surest bet of defending your sovereignty is to uphold international law. And clearly, as far as international law is concerned, the action of Russia in Ukraine violates the Charter of the UN, which we all ascribe to. So I would disagree that we should play a neutral role because we have certain interests that Russia may be needed. Of course, even during the days of the Cold War, where we were positively neutral, we still have the confidence to state our independent positions while still putting the support of both the West and the East. It's just a dynamic balance. There are times that, yes, the same Russia can be approached for support, depending on what we put on the board. It's not only because you are saying that, no, this action is against international law, therefore Russia will quickly turn against you. Of course, there are dynamics, there are diplomatic approaches that can be used to bring Russia on board if you need their support.
All right then. Finally, where do you see this ending in terms of the aggression, as Ghana is describing it, but Russia sees it as reclaiming its sovereignty? Will this end anytime soon? And for developing nations such as Ghana, what could be the likely effect if we continue to experience this war in Ukraine?
Looking at the position of Russia, it will take some time for this to come to an end because they will not want to concede defeat. And from all the overtures that have been made to them, it seems that withdrawing from Ukraine will seem like a defeat to Russia. And so we also have a situation where the dynamics at play are not straightforward. The West has an interest, Russia has an interest. Of course, if you look at what has precipitated this development, for instance, the eastward expansion of NATO, the EU, and the threat that Russia thought that it is being threatened within its traditional sphere of influence. Now, and if you look at how the West has play this game in terms of the support, in terms of military support and other support that they have given to Ukraine. It's as if the West is virtually fighting a proxy war. And once that interest is at play, it makes it difficult for a compromise from the Russian side. Now, what we may see is that, yes, somehow there may be stalemate where Russia maintains its influence over the part of Russia that it controls, the part of Ukraine that it controls, and we will see this kind of a divided country. But of course, there's also room for still negotiating and see if we can set. But I do not see a quick end to this war. It will be a long war. Indeed, Russia went in under the assumption that they could quickly overrun Ukraine. But that is the nature of war. You may estimate that you'll be able to quickly override your opponent. But wars are not predictable. The end of war cannot be predicted. That's why it is the least preferred approach to any international issue, because you cannot predict the end of a war from the beginning. No matter how sophisticated you are, no matter how well armed you are, Russia is facing a nationalist resistance, people who are motivated to die for their country, not just the military of Ukraine. So it introduced various dynamics which Russia did not expect. So I do not see a quick end, and I see an end where you have Ukraine virtually divided between an eastern sphere of Russia and the western part controlled by the Ukrainian government and the West. So we may run around for maybe at least the end of this year and possibly the next year.
Anyway, thanks for your time here on the show. That's Dr. Ishmael Ovo. He's an international relations expert to the University of Education, Winneba. Now to education itself. You can't memorize your way out of poverty. Well, these words containing excerpts of a viral footage of the Education Minister, Dr. Osei Duchum, is beginning to stoke public debate about Ghana's education curricula and the need to roll out some reform. Dr. Duchum, taking his turn at one of the sideline engagements at the United Nations General Assembly, expressed the view that the mere theory does not change the face of education of developing nations. Now, according to him, the implementation of many classrooms approach projects in Africa is yet to see a conscious evolution in terms of practicalizing lessons for children of school-going age.
To schools upon schools, and I speak with the students. And when I finish speaking with them, I'll say, do you have a question for me? No hand goes up. A hand is just to go up. In all my encounters in Ghanaian classrooms, we have tamed the children. We just want them to write down what we tell them. At the day of exams, they should put down what we have told them. We say, you are the best student the country has ever known. That kind of education system will not transform Ghana. That kind of education system is not going to give us critical thinking individuals, especially since we are in the 21st century and education 4.0, the fourth industrial revolution. You can't memorize your way out of poverty, but you can critically think and innovate out of poverty. So Ghanaian schools, Africans will have to begin to take a serious look at what I call the assertive curriculum. A curriculum that empowers the African child to ask questions and challenge the status quo respectfully within the African cultural context. But not a curriculum that tells the African child to be quiet and don't say anything when the adult is speaking.
Is the minister staying true to his words here in Ghana? Let's assess that. Joining me now is Opoku Mentayao, his deputy spokesperson for the Ministry of Education. Thank you, sir, for your time. For some, this is mere rhetoric. What's the evidence to back what it is that the minister is talking about here in Ghana?
Let me say good afternoon to yourself and to our lovely viewers. What the Honorable Education Minister, the Honorable Dr. Duchum said is not a mere rhetoric. It can be seen in the evidence of the implementation and the numerous reforms that is currently ongoing at the Ministry of Education. Now, when we talk of learning, we are looking at learning as a relative permanent change. Now, we are looking at the change in the individual that is relative and it's permanent. And in the process, that individual is able to fit well into the society. So therefore, the curriculum that we're talking about, or which has been designed from the primary up to the junior high school level, and currently the ongoing curriculum for the senior high school level, tells the focus and the core competencies that the learners after the process should be able to exhibit for the society and to contribute to national development. Now, as part of the core competencies which are expected that learners are to display or achieve, can be seen where critical thinking and innovation becomes a major hub of what the training seeks to put out after its implementation. So every activity which is done in the classroom or activities under the supervision of the school should lead to these core competencies that we do refer to. And that is what the curriculum is embedded with. An assertive individual that is able to ask critical questions, tame the mind to a point whereby the individual is able to analytically deal with situations and be able to question what the status quo is, so that the individual can also contribute meaningfully to the progress of our nation. And that is why the Honorable Minister said that you can't memorize yourself out of poverty. And if we are to memorize only that, then it will be about examination, cheap off.
Okay. Yeah. And it's not as though when the minister is saying this, we don't have schools under trees, for instance, here in the country. You're dealing with issues of lack of infrastructure in all tiers of education. You also have outstanding issues relating to the free senior high school policy, overcrowding in some senior high schools. It's as though the entire education system has a major challenge, and yet we find the sector minister going out to the world to speak as though everything was fine back home.
Why, at times, when I hear of these challenges, and let's not assume that the challenges are taking the better part of what it's currently being implemented. What is important that we should avert our minds to is the positives within what we are doing currently. And it is very important that we do situate the conversation within the proper context so that we can have a meaningful discussion in that aspect. What we should all avert our minds to is the new phase of our system that government is currently bringing up on board as part of the infrastructure drive. And as we speak, over 875 different projects are currently ongoing, and it spans across the length and breadth of the country. Now, you look at the basic school education level, even at the junior high school level, you hear of minister telling the world that when we talk of secondary education, it should be 6 years. We do have 3 years of lower secondary, which forms part of the basic. And currently what is happening is to put up an infrastructure that fits into what is described as a junior secondary, junior high school level. And that process has started with this implementation. You go to Onye Abenase, you see the project ongoing. You go to the Jaben municipal, you see the project ongoing. And 35 of them across the length and breadth of the country. And when that is completed next year, each one will be able to accommodate 1,200 to 1,500 students at a go. And it has the science lab as expected, the library as expected, the computer lab as expected. And if we want to give meaningful education, we can't continue to have this system running, which do not equip the learner with the 21st century skill that we've all been preaching about.
Yeah, so what you're doing is simply to scrap the 1C system. You're allowing people to go to school without any form of assessment at such a crucial time of transitioning between junior high school level into high school level. You agree you may be creating some challenges there, don't you?
No, that is not the case. Now, if you look at the various form of assessment, that is that. Now, we have two. Now, we have the formative assessment that we do at the school level. And we have the summative assessment that is on the national scale. And an example of the summative one is the WASI and the BEC that I referred to. So in the formative evaluation aspect, it is done by the school, and the school owns it. And that is what we use, what we term as the continuous assessment that forms part of the basis for the termination point at BEC or at the WASI level. And if we want to put them together, for example, when we talk of assessment, what we are doing, if you want to assess me as to whether I'm delivering on the objective stated in a lesson plan that you've done, it will be based on the delivery that I give you at the end of the day. And I think our understanding of assessment has always been that we sit only and write. Through my observation, through the expected qualities after the implementation of the lesson, what I put out, if it meets the criteria, the assessment that the teacher sets.
So what happens, briefly, what happens to WASI?
We haven't talked about WASI, that we are replacing WASI with anything.
Yeah, but what will happen to it? You are implementing a new system. What will happen to WASI?
No, I'm telling you that the new system do not do away with assessment. That is why I gave you the two types of assessment.
Precisely. The West Africa system.
Part of it.
But what will happen? Because if you don't have any major assessment happening at that turning point of junior high school 3, you're basically saying we won't have BEC, we won't have, probably WASI then. Just go through school, get your certificate.
We haven't told the world that we are not going to have a BEC or a WASI. That has never been the language of NACA or the Ministry of Education. And if you care today, if you read the pre-tertiary assessment framework, it tells about the levels of assessment that the learner will have to go through. Those are the school level, those are the national level. And even at the national level, we've recently introduced what is known as the National Standardized Test as part of the summative evaluation or the summative assessment done at the national level. So if we want to look at the importance of this assessment, what will be the basis for BEC? You will need placement, and it becomes an important measure so that you'll be able to place the learner at the appropriate continuation of a school.
Okay.
And for the WASI, same for continuation and either the world of work or whatever. So summative assessment has never been out of the system. And the Ministry of Education, the NACA, which is responsible for this, has never communicated to the world that we've done away with BECE or WASI, as it's been speculated. That is never true. We've never said that. We've never communicated that. And we've never even sat around the table to look at that, because we believe, educationists will tell you, after every curriculum implementation, there should be assessment at the tail end. And at the national level, how then do you do it if there is no assessment? That is where summative assessment becomes very important.
Okay, then.
So
final issue.
The others stay.
Right, final issue. You would definitely need more structures in the rollout of these reforms and this new curricula that's in the offing. The e-blocks have come into perspective. Former President John Mahama has complained that you're not taking a look at that facility, looking at what you intend to implement. Now's the time to look at it, isn't it? We are dealing with infrastructure at all levels. Now, per the records, as you know, we came to meet a completed 29 of them, and currently our flower was completed and it's in operation now. And we've been able to add over 35 of them. And if you visited our flower to see what we added on for it to fit the purpose in which the 21st century scale is needed. Now, what we've said that before a school will be operationalized, all the existing facilities must be in place. The library, the computer lab, all the science lab should be in place before we will operationalize them. And a typical example is just recently what the president commissioned the voter at Aflao, and that was reported by our outfit. So for infrastructure, bringing on board many of them, you look at the 10 model schools, 4 of them in operation now, others are nearing completion. That is expected to be completed next year and operationalized as part of the process. We are building 21st century schools as well.
And I've given an example. If you go to Onyu Abenas, you see it. If you go to Jabi, you see it. If you come to Accra on the East Legon stretch, where we do have the GTVET, the TVET offices, there is another one going on there. 35 of them across the length and breadth of the country. And as I indicated now, over 875 at the basic level, which we are implementing. And at the secondary school level, we are looking at 1,135 different projects, most of them completed, others are still ongoing. So it's an expansion work, and therefore we need to understand the motive of government. We cannot wait before we equip our learners with the 21st century skill. If we want to compete with the world, that is where we need to go. An assertive learner, a learner who thinks critically, a learner whose contribution is vital towards the development and the transformation of this country. And that is what the new system, that is what the new reform seeks to put on the table.
Right.
We need to embrace it before we can join our other countries as we develop.
We need to go. Yao Pokumensa, thank you for the time here on The Pulse. I'm grateful that you've been able to spend some time with us. You're on The Pulse on the JoyNews channel. We'll take a short break. We'll return with more stories. Please stay. And you're welcome back. 3 more students of the Kwame Nkrumah University of Science and Technology have been remanded to police custody over the Katanga Continental clash. And as we do know, 3 students of the university have been asked to be with the police in connection with the recent violent clashes on campus. This brings to 5 in total the number of students arrested out of the 62 suspects. Lava Firm's Emmanuel Bright Kweku, who was in court, says that students were charged with rioting and causing unlawful damage.
Friends and family of the 3 could not hold their tears after proceedings in court. They came to court hoping the accused persons would be granted bail. Lawyers for the accused persons prayed the court to grant bail for their clients to allow them sit for the ongoing examination at the university. Prosecution, however, argued the suspect could tamper with police investigations if granted bail. The Asokare-Mampong District Court had issued warrants for 62 persons suspected to be involved in the recent violence on the KNUST campus. Her Worship Hilda Esther Rioter, who presided over proceedings, ordered the prosecution to make adequate provisions for the student to sit for the ongoing examinations while they stay in custody. Defense counsel were, however, unhappy with the court's decision. Elvis Ofori is counsel for the accused.
Well, they are doing their work and we are also doing ours, so I wouldn't blame them. We tried hard, but the bail was not granted.
He was, however, skeptical the suspect would be allowed to sit for exams.
We have our doubts, but once it's a court order, they have to oblige.
Head of Legal and Prosecution at the Ashanti Regional Police Command, ACP Kofi Blagoji, however, assured compliance with the court orders.
No, the court is saying we should make adequate provision for them to get the exams written, so we shall do that.
The 3 suspects, Emmanuel Apia Amoa, Eugene Nyamisi, and Kwabna Kwatin Ameniampong, are slated to reappear in court on October 4, 2022. For JoyNews, Emmanuel Bright Kweku reporting.
And let's bring in Bright Kweku now, who has some updates for us on this very case. Bright, just fill us in with what the police has said about the 62 other persons they're on the lookout for. And kindly unmute for me, Bright, so I can hear you.
Am I audible enough now?
Right. Okay.
All right. So, Blessed, the police is still investigating the other suspects. So far, the police has made 5 arrests. So, out of these persons, they are left with over like 50 or so to make arrests. So, hopefully, the police is still investigating. We are told that the CCTV footage they took the other time is what they are resorting to now for to make these arrests. So far, that is what has been happening. And then what happened at court today is that most of when the lawyers for the accused came to court, they had come to plea for these suspects that were arrested. They were hoping that they will be granted bail because they are writing exams. The students for KNUST are writing exams, and then hopefully by this week or next week they should be done with the exam. So they were hoping that the court will grant these students bail for them to sit and write the exam. So her lordship, her ladyship actually, Hilda Esther, ordered that these suspects should be allowed to sit for the exam. The police should, or the prosecution should actually make provisions for them to sit for the exam while they stay in custody. So this is what actually happened on at court today.
And in some of the visuals, we've seen parents not happy and in sorrows, as we can see from the pictures. So giving that account, it appears that even some of the students themselves may not be in the right frame of mind going into these exams. What do you sense, I mean, having monitored proceedings in court?
So from the images you saw, indeed, the family and friends are unhappy with how proceedings are going. They were hoping that these students will be granted bail. So it was all an emotional situation in court today. Most of them couldn't hold their tears. Right after her worship made the verdict, they all were kind of emotional. They just dropped into tears, and tears were flowing all over. So it's kind of so emotional for the family and even the friends that were in court today.
And initially, when the story came up, we got wind of some students from the University of Cape Coast who may have been part of the riots. Are they part of those who are being prosecuted now?
Okay, so far from our sources, we've not had any indication whether these students are from University of Cape Coast or any other institution. So far, we've been informed they are KNUST students. So we can't really confirm whether any students from the other institutions, tertiary institutions, have been arrested in connection with the riots last month.
Right, and let's wrap up with parents. What have they been telling you?
The parents, it's not easy for them. Most of them, they are kind of emotional. They are just hoping that these things wouldn't happen again, and they are hoping that prosecution will be done, and then they will know, the children will know their fate during this particular situation.
Emmanuel Bright Kweku joining us from the Ashanti Regional Capital, Kumasi. I'm grateful. Back here in Accra, potholes and surface defects on roads are a big problem in this country. Not only do they look unsightly, but they also pose a real safety hazard to road users. Whilst in other jurisdictions, road users get compensated for the impact of potholes on their vehicles, Ghanaians suffer the harsh realities of potholes in pain. My colleague Samuel Kojo-Brace has been spending some time on the Tema motorway to monitor how potholes and making the motorway a death trap for users, and has come through with this report.
Currently, as I said, it's about 60 years. It's about 60 years. So the moment the lifespan reaches or elapses, this development will come. So what we are doing is, let's tackle the most serious one first. Our mobile maintenance units are on standby for the potholes. So that one will be done immediately after we have finished this one.
A roads engineer with the Ghana Highway Authority given assurances potholes on the motorway will be patched immediately after repair works on the Laklapa Bridge were completed. It's been over 3 months, and the potholes are now becoming increasingly problematic for road users. Robert has been driving on this highway for the past 10 years.
Very bad. Photos ready serious, especially side bridge na where China there be a so bridge ni no. Our photos ready. They say come some other thing, but very bad. Motor in there and one I'm sure is serious. And then we start to use car for motor use. We have a leak for more than 10 years. Send the TR and TR. They patchy still. The TR and TR. Motor way there. Best thing is that I'm paying for bedroom on by and for flat because we own concrete and iron rods. It's what the coach have made concrete near us. Any maybe I am some patch. I start penny up because I don't need concrete. Now the coach have a fra. Any man. It's the other part of the crimes of we engineers and going to my way.
At the Manette Junction motorway taxi rank, I come across Seth, a driver. He describes driving on the motorway as hell.
Something about coming to Shashi. Potholes are there, more is uncountable. When you reach, before you reach Abattoir Bridge, there is a bridge there. That is no more potholes because two sides or whether here or here is two lane. Any driver reach there, you have to slow down before you can pass and continue your journey. And when you are coming to Malls and on the way before you get to the roundabout, and for county there is uncountable, honestly. And some they patch some raise when it will throw you. Some too they patch it, but it's going down. So it's no more. And the road said it's no more. The first as motor is no more motorway now. It become normal road now. It is no more motorway. There's a traffic 24 hours all the time when you get to the motorway. It is only midnight that you can pass motorway. You will go safely. But daytime, you will not what you want you get. Rather what is on the way. That's how you also go about it.
Fiavo is also a taxi driver here. He wants government to take action.
Even from here we are right now. Recently, some has occurred. Just from Tema roundabout coming to Abattoir, that area. There's a lot of accidents that happen over there due to potholes. As you know, motorway is a highway. In fact, now it has become a normal road for us. So if they want to maintain the motorway as a highway, then they should at least we need extension and to solve the potholes on the motorway.
It is safe to say that potholes are a big concern for road users. The longer we wait, the more accident and death are recorded on this motorway. For JoyNews, Samuel Kojo Brace, Motorway.
Let's stay on roads because the people of Boyne in the West Mamprasi municipality of the Northeast region have embarked on a communal work to save the community from being cut off by heavy rains. The deplorable community road has been flooded and washed away by recent rains. The initiative comes after their pleas to the local assembly fell on deaf ears. The chief served a notice to lead the boycott of the 2024 elections if the road is not fixed. Correspondent Ilyasu Tanko has more in this report.
Boyini is a farming community in the West Mamprasi municipality of the Northeast region. However, the small village of over 3,000 farm population is located far away from the municipal capital and can only be accessed through the town of Langbinsi in the East Mamprasi municipality, as all other alternative routes have become unmotorable. The road from Langbinsi to the community is just 7 kilometers and has been the cornerstone of the economic and livelihood activities of the people. I asked if the state is aware of us. We have no road, electricity, nor hospital. Due to the poor state of the road, we struggle a lot to reach the nearest hospital. Not to talk about the suffering pregnant women and labor patients go through on the road, and also armed robbers are taking over the road. Despite its enormous importance to the locals who depend on it to transport their farm produce to major market centers in Langbinsi and Nalirgu, the road that faced years of neglect. All the routes connecting this community are in bad state. We are stranded in the community, unable to travel to either Waliwali or Langbinsi. Armed robbers are attacking us almost every day. We have since lost about 5 motorbikes in these attacks. Although the road had been in a bad state, riddled with potholes and weak bridges, the arrival of the rains had caused further deterioration, and the community now stands on the verge of being isolated. To avoid a total cut-off, The chief and his elders, in collaboration with the assemblyman of the community, organized communal labor to put the road in shape, as they claim the municipal assembly authorities have refused to fix it for them. Aziz Dingana is the community's assemblyman.
I've been in assembly for more than 2 years now. I'm not up to 3 years. But in here, when I entered there, as I'm talking, I met with the MC and then the MP. As at 2021 December, if you check into our executive committee meetings, it was a recommendation that Boine Road should be worked on. When we met this year for a meeting, I consulted, and then they said there is no funds. Anytime the funds are ready, then they'll work on the route. Last year, we organized a communal labor like we did today. We look for a tractor as we did today. Then we fuel it, and then we work on the road. But because human effort cannot be like a contractor, that is why we couldn't work it perfectly.
On his part, the chief spokesman, Mbakadi Kofi, said the community will boycott the next general election unless the road was fixed. I would like to be on my knees to appeal to the government to come to our rescue. We have been neglected. The promise to provide us with electricity has failed. Look at the poles standing there. The abandoned bridge too is about to be washed away. We will also like to declare our intention to boycott the 2024 election unless the road is fixed. The chief's pronouncement was welcomed by the residents. We are yet to see the benefit of always partaking in every election in the country. Therefore, unless our road is fixed, no member of this community will cast his or her vote. We will no longer vote in any election unless we are provided with electricity and our road is fixed. From Boyini in Mamprose West Municipality, Ilyas Sotanko reporting for JoyNews.
Up north, the Bambara granite is a traditional food crop largely cultivated by farmers in the northern parts of the country. In most parts of the Upper East region, Bambara granites are used in preparing meals for funerals and for making local pastries like kose. Despite the importance of this food crop, the Council for Scientific and Industrial Research has found that many farmers are no longer cultivating this in large quantities because they regularly record some low yields. In the Institute, they are taking some steps to introduce some new varieties to improve the yields. Correspondent Albert Sori has been taking a look at that.
The Bambara granite is a leguminous crop grown for food. It is sometimes called Bambara bean and is similar to the regular beans or cowpea. Bambara granite is highly rich in protein. In the Upper East region, Bambara granite seeds are commonly called suma and are very important in the traditional settings, mainly because many foods prepared during the performance of funerals are from Bambara granites. They are also used for making pastries like the popular kose, which is consumed with Hausa cocoa for breakfast by many Ghanaians. Bambara granites can also be cooked fresh or after they have been dried. But despite the importance of this food crop, farmers in the Upper East region have over the years reduced the quantity of Bambara granite they cultivate during the farming seasons. According to some of the farmers, pest infestations and low yields account for their lack of interest in growing Bambara granites.
The biggest thing is the climate change, like shortage of rain or erratic rainfalls. And then whenever there's too much rain, that very year they don't harvest.
The Plant Genetic Resources Research Institute of the Council for Scientific and Industrial Research has therefore introduced some farmer varieties of Bambara granite to farmers in the Binduri and Timpani districts of the Upper East region for trials on their farms. The institute hopes that the move will enable farmers to identify Bambara groundnut types that are suited to their specific farming conditions and encourage more farmers to grow the food crop, as it could contribute significantly to improving Ghana's food security. Some of the farmer varieties introduced to the farmers are tolerant to drought and can withstand pest and disease infestation. They are also high-yielding and have an early maturity period, unlike the traditional varieties previously grown by the farmers. Dr. Daniel Ashi-Kote is the acting director for the Plant Genetic Resources Research Institute of the Council for Scientific and Industrial Research.
Participatory field trials that are being conducted with farmers would lead to farmers selecting Bambara groundnut genotypes that are suited to their farming context. And once they do that, input dealers or seed producers who are part of the germplasm user groups would now come on board and pick up these seeds or seeds of these selected genotypes and multiply them. But prior to multiplication, these seed producers will be given training on how to produce quality seeds.
The farmer varieties of Bambara groundnuts are being distributed under the Seed for Resilience project, which is being implemented in Ghana and 4 other African countries under the auspices of the Global Crop Diversity Trust based in Germany.
And now the Member of Parliament for Nalerico Gambaga, Alhaji Baba Saidu Isifo, is described as embarrassing the unfortunate posture of government and its decision to abandon the construction of infrastructure projects worth some 25 million Ghana cedis at the Gambaga College of Education. The projects include an administration block and also some lecture facilities which were commenced in 2016 at the college's new site, and they've since been abandoned. Management of the college says the school was in dire need of the infrastructure and that the situation has greatly affected academic activities, while the MP for the area, who paid a working visit to the college, indicates that he would initiate some parliamentary processes to ensure the education minister is held accountable.
The Gambaga College of Education, the only college of education in the Northeast region, has been operating in an old basic primary school compound for the past 10 years since its establishment. Students of the college still use the old and dilapidated classrooms and other facilities inherited therein. With a current student population of over 800, inadequate classroom and accommodation spaces for both tutors and students, lack of other essential teaching and learning facilities such as an ICT center, science laboratory, and a library, among others, remain the true realities of the college. Also, inadequate hostel facilities mean students are accommodated outside in rented houses, which makes it difficult for effective academic and in-house oversight duties. In 2016, the then government, through the Get Fund institution, began the efforts to transform the college by securing a new site and initiating the construction of several projects in response to the acute infrastructure deficit. These infrastructure projects that were being constructed included a model school complex, an administration block, a multi-purpose hall, and a hostel block. The projects were, however, halted and abandoned in 2017 when the change of government occurred. The development has been a source of great concern for both tutors and students of the college, who continue to express it at every given opportunity.
Our new site. Fortunately, in your address, you mentioned something about it. May we know, as our representative, whether there has been any attempt, and if there are, what is the attempt and what is the way forward for us to get these particular projects completed, since you are already aware of their existence? Thank you.
One of such opportunity was presented when the Member of Parliament, Alhaji Baba Saidu Isifo, paid a working visit to the college. The MP, after touring the abandoned site, described as disheartening and unfortunate the government's decision to discontinue and allow the projects to rot away.
And for the past 8 years, they have been struggling to do value for money audit. My brother, this money that is sunk here belongs to you and I. It is not for John Dramani Mahama. It is not for the NDC. It is for you and I. We are the taxpayers. And I can tell you that this project was budgeted for. We all contributed money to get it to where it is today. And it was not going to be built for NDC alone. Why? John Mama was not coming to live here. John Mama's child was not coming to stay here. So what are we doing to ourselves? It is very disheartening and unfortunate.
He, however, pledged to ensure the Ministry for Education and all other institutions behind this mistake will be held to account by Parliament.
Only get details if I get a minister to the floor of Parliament. He will speak. If you bring him to the floor of Parliament, he has to speak. We are enjoined by our standing orders that once I file a question and it is admitted by the Speaker, he has no choice than to come before the House and will engage.
Elias Sotanko reporting from Nalirgu for Joy News.
And now to the Ghana Journalists Association. The umbrella body for journalist practices in the country is raising some concerns about the breakdown in a smooth flow of information and correspondence between the Ghana Police Service and the Journalists Association. The group wants the police service to reform its structure and mode of communication with the press across the country. Joining me now is Dominic Holonji, is GJA Organizing Secretary, joining us via Zoom. First of all, we've never seen this in such a long time, where the Inky fraternity has some problems with the Ghana Police Service. So why is it that we're finding GJA coming out at this time raising concerns about the approach of communications at the Public Affairs Unit of the Ghana Police Service? Kindly unmute for me, Dominic, so my viewers can hear you. You'd have to unmute first of all. Dominic, can you hear me now?
Thank you very much.
Right.
Yes, I can hear you. Thank you very much. The fact of the matter is that journalism, for that matter, the work of the media, thrives on information. And so if you operate in a decentralized system of governance, and an actor in the governance system decides to centralize its operation in terms of dissemination of information from the police administration, we in the media find that undesirable because we believe without information, we can't be in business in terms of educating and informing the public. And so we've had the rank and file of the media fraternity calling on the association to engage the police administration to reconsider its decision on centralizing the sharing of information from Accra. For example, if something happens in Kaliwale, what we have seen as a trend now is that the information is sent to Accra. Journalists in the region find it difficult accessing the information because they are told Accra is handling the information that they will be communicated to from Accra. And you know, as journalists, when you go to a crime scene, what you do is you try to gather information, and you get from eyewitnesses, you get from people who you can't verify the information from. And so you need the police, who are the law enforcement agencies, to help you verify your information. And so if it takes time for you to get that information, it's difficult for us as journalists because news must be timely, it must be accurate. And so that has been the concern of our members, and they want us to impress upon the police administration to take a second look at that decision.
The point has been raised by some others that you have an opportunity now with the right to information law. Is that far-fetched?
It is not far-fetched, but that is another way of getting the information. But in the past, we don't have a centralized system of information sharing from the police administration. And so we are just asking that the police administration helps us in getting the information. You know, the processes involved in using the right information system. It can also take you a long time, and sometimes you have to go to court in order to get information. And so we are just leading with the police administration. We know the new IGP is doing a lot. He has brought a lot of leadership to the police administration, and we pray that he will listen to the call from the Ghana Journalists Association, for that matter, media practitioners in this country, to decentralize the operation when it comes to sharing of information. We know that in every district, in every region, we have the regional commanders, we have the district commanders, we have the public relations officers working in those regions. And in the past, they've been giving media information regarding law enforcement and crime in the community. And so we just pray and hope that since we operate in a democratic system where we are using decentralization, that should also be the way to go, and not to centralize information.
Anyway, we'll see what will happen in the coming days. Dominic Holonji, GJ Organizing Secretary, thank you for your time. We're building up tonight. We do know that the Black Stars of Ghana will face off with Brazil in the World Cup warm-up game in France. Of course, former Black Stars player Kingston, who was part of the national team that lost 1-0 to Sogah in 2007 actually, believes that the game will give the technical team an idea about the quality of the team. Listen.
For me, when I heard about this friendly game, I was like, wow, the GFA have done very, very well. Because if you want to win, you have to beat the best, you know, and the build up to the World Cup. For me, I think one top game will do, and then bringing Brazil on, for me, I think is the best we can have. So our performance today will send a huge signal to the teams, and then the world that Ghana is ready for the tournament. Because if you meet a team like Brazil, you perform very well against them. Now Ghanaians will have confidence that we have what it takes to beat any other team in that tournament. Because we all know it's a very big stage. You know, if the performance is not too well, then I think there is going to be a lot of pressure on the team, and then in the technical team as well. And I know, you know, Ghanaians, we are football lovers. Yeah. We want results. We want our team to perform well. So for me, I think it's a huge thing for the team. If they win, perform well and win the game, it's a plus to them. If they don't win, for me, I think they're going to have huge pressure on their shoulders.
This is a game that the coaches would look at and then have a good idea or feeling of what they're about, you know. They have an idea of football that they want to transfer to the players, but you have to test that idea. You have to test against the best of opposition. And here in this case, you have Brazil. Who else would you want to test your ideas and challenge yourself? Yeah. So from the technical bench standpoint, you know, you want to test yourself, as I said. And if it goes well, you get a pat on the shoulder. You think, okay, maybe we are up to something. If it doesn't go well, you doubt yourself. You start asking questions. You start looking for solutions. But this is a test. You know, it's a test of strength, it's a test of character, it's a test of ideas, a test of performance. And this is, again, preparing you for the biggest stage in world football. So kudos to the FA, like Lai said, for finding a tough opposition like this to test our team, to test our technical bench, to test how you work with each other as well. Because again, if it goes well, there may be some pointing fingers here, and that's where you need to know who is behind you, who is loyal, who is supportive, and who is not. You know. So really, in all aspects of the game, on the field, off the field, this really is a big test. And of course, this is what you want if you're preparing yourself for the biggest stage in world football.
And we're definitely bringing back the love for the Black Stars. We wait to see what then happens tonight. And you might want to catch commentary on Joy 99.7 FM. I am Blessed Sogah, and that's all we have for you here on The Pulse. We're taking a break. We'll be back. We'll see you again next time here on The Pulse. I'm Blessed Sogah. Log on to myjoyonline.com for updates on stories. Stay with us on the Joy News channel. We have more exciting content coming your way.